on, isn't it like St. Patrick's evening,
Yes,
right?
St.
I know
Patrick's
you
Day.
could be in a lot of places, but you chose to be here, so I'm really excited. I'm sorry that we don't have green punch, but two of our esteemed board members are happily clad in the Irish colors, so thank you
I did it.
for celebrating with us. My name is Janae Queen, and I'm the chair for the commission, and we're just super excited that you're here. I can't say enough. And so what we're going to do tonight, because we want to get started, we've got a phenomenal panel. We have another panelist coming. We all know traffic around here can get a little crazy, so we'll just have her slide right in once she joins us. That said, the way the evening will go, I'm going to do a quick round of introductions. We'll hold on panelist introductions because we've got those prepared. The panelists will speak a little bit, frame the conversation for us, and then we'll open it up for Q&A, okay? And so Tahani's going to talk a little bit more about where we are and why we're here, but the reason this is particularly important is because Mr. Baker said to us, look, I've got 3 years left, and I don't want to just walk away and feel like, I'm done, I did what I was supposed to do. He wants change in Prince George's County, period. He wants enduring change. And so how do we change the way that we do business? How do we change policies and practices? How do we shift our work? How do we impact and influence perceptions about who Prince Georgians are and what we do and what we have to offer so that we can embed change that endures for a while and in good ways? We want well-being for our community members. We want to model behavior for other counties like us. And so he said, give me something good. And we said, well, you know, we actually think early childhood education is a good place to start or to look closely at. And he said, all right, well, tell me a little bit more. So we brought in some folks that tell them a little bit more. And so this is bigger than early childhood because we know if we invest early on that sort of supports that enduring change, right? But let's not just think about early childhood investments. How does this connect to economic opportunity in our community? How do we attract folks to come and be with us and recognize how amazing we are? So we really want to invest in education, shift perceptions, and get folks to rally around and support Prince George's County. So with that said, that's part of why we're here today. I'll pause. Tahani will talk a little bit more. And what I'd love to do quickly is just, aside from the panels, go around the table, tell me your name, your organization, and your role.
Sharon Baker, County Executive.
Betty Francis, Deputy County Manager for Sharon Baker, County Executive.
Amy Olivo. I think I'm here in a couple different hats. I'm the former chair of this commission. I'm the chair of the Board of Trustees for Prince George's Community College, and I'm the Chief of Staff to Prince George's County Council Vice Chair Danielle LaRose.
I'm going to our guest now.
Good evening. Lindsay Allard-Anyamba. I'm with School Readiness Consulting. I'm the Executive Director. And Nicole Sharp. I'm also with School Readiness Consulting, and I'm a Senior Associate.
Good evening, Sheila Jackson. I'm the Director of Family and Community Engagement for Prince George's County Public Schools.
Good evening, I'm Laura Barbie Matthews. I'm the Coordinating Supervisor of Early Childhood Programs in Prince George's County Public Schools.
Gregory Fields is a new resident to Hyattsville, and I'm a researcher on education and the link between expectations and achievement. And until June, I'm still a principal in upstate New York.
Welcome again.
Thank you. Kathleen Tees, I'm the CEO of the Prince George's County Memorial Library System.
I'm Donna Weisen. I'm the Dean of the College of Education at the University of Maryland and a commission member.
I'm Jimmy Smith, President of the Business Roundtable, member of the Commission, and member of the County Council.
Give me 1 second. So just so you know, our council has expanded for today. So we've got council members, these three over here, Tahani, Ms. Francis, and myself. We're the council who meets monthly. And then we've invited some guests who can support the conversation that we're having. Our meetings are open in that the public is allowed to join, and so we always have folks who are guests. And so since it's a special meeting, I will turn it over and have you two introduce yourselves as well.
Crystal Carpenter. I'm a parent, a resident, and I also serve with the Prince George's NAACP Education Committee and serve as president of Auburn Springdale Civic Association.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Alexander Wallace. I represent District 7 on the Prince George's County Board of Education.
Thank you, and I'd love for you to join us at the table. So, yeah, absolutely. So there's a seat here, and there's a seat here. So please join us at the table as our special guest. All right, thank you all. Tahani.
Thank you, Janae. I'll stand as well.
Sorry, I have to leave you guys early. I'm sorry, I have to go to Boston tonight. But
We're happy that
It has
Janae
nothing to do with the fact that it's St. Patrick's Day.
it doesn't. It's a meeting.
So I want to echo Janae's welcome. Really a delight to welcome all of you, and especially our distinguished panelists. We're really looking forward to hearing from you and to learning from you. I wanted to take just a few moments to set some context to frame our conversation, and to talk a little bit about why early childhood education is so very important, not just to the work of the Commission, but to the work of the county as a whole. At our core, what we do, our work in the county is about celebrating families, celebrating communities, supporting communities, particularly through the work of TNI, Transforming Neighborhoods Initiative, and TNI at School, and also investing in our community. And our Economic Development Corporation is core to that work. Education is core to all of this. And to give you just some context in terms of numbers, our population in the county is about 900,000 individuals, residents. Our school population is about 129,000 children. And if you figure each child is connected to a network, a family network of at least 3 or 4 people, then you extrapolate that out, and about half of our residents are personally connected to the school system. And that doesn't include the many people who are employed by the system, who are also Prince George's residents. Not all of them, but many of them are Prince George's residents. And the many businesses that the system contracts with, and many of those are locally owned. Welcome, Dr. Eubanks. There's a chair here, and there's here from here.
Sorry, we're just filming.
So from a business perspective, our realtors will tell us that education is the most important variable. That when people are making decisions to buy homes, that is the core thing that they're thinking about, is the quality of the schools in their particular neighborhood. Also, from a business perspective, our colleagues at the EDC will tell us that as they're promoting businesses and promoting investment in the county, that's one of the questions they often get is are concerns and or questions about our local schools. And so that's kind of the education piece that's core to our work in the county. Early childhood education is the foundation to all of that. And so that's part of why we're convening this panel, is because without that strong foundation, then our kids are not getting off to a strong start. According to a recent assessment that was done by the Maryland State Department of Education, and you have the data here in front of you, 34% of our children are kindergarten ready. That means 66% of our kids coming into the system are not kindergarten ready. So there's a tremendous amount of work to be done, and the hope is that we're going to double that number in the near future. So what does it mean for kids to be ready for school? What does it mean when they're not? So our panelists are going to talk about this in different ways. What does it mean for kids to be kindergarten ready? But at a basic level, it means the kids are entering school with basic sense of literacy. They know when they pick up a book that this is how you open a book and they can approach literacy. They have those basic literacy practices. They know their alphabet, they know their numbers. They also feel confident. I mean, I was struck by, we went to a child care center, an early childhood education center, and one of the young children, Mr. Baker, went to introduce himself and he said, "Hi, I'm Carlos, who are you?" And I was struck because he had such a sense of confidence, and that's part of kids being kindergarten ready. They're approaching school, they're ready to engage. Our early childhood education system also engages key sectors within the county. So about 1/3 of our young children receive early care through a local business person in the form of child care centers. Half of our children receive early care services and early child care education through pre-K programs that are offered by Prince George's County Public Schools. And then the rest receive care through informal care, family, and other kinds of informal networks that may or may not be paid. That's about almost 3,000 children receive care in that form. So tonight we're convening a panel of experts and leaders in the field to share their experiences with us, and then we're going to open up the conversation for questions, for comments, and the idea of this panel is that we're collectively thinking about new opportunities around early childhood education for the county, possible new investments, and also, if you look at this table, there are partnerships with all of the institutions who you represent and Prince George's County, but I would also encourage us to think about how could we strengthen those partnerships and further increase the quality and the number of seats that we have that we consider high quality early childhood education seats. So with that, I'm going to introduce our distinguished panelists. Marty Borschel is the Executive Director of the Prince George's Child Resource Center, and she's going to give us context about early childhood education in the county. Dr. Wolf Grafwaldner is Assistant State Superintendent, Maryland State Department of Education, and he'll offer us a state-level perspective, including best practices and also perhaps some funding opportunities. Dr. Brenda Jones-Harden is professor at the University of Maryland, and she'll talk about the role of higher education in early childhood education, including research perspectives on high-quality early childhood education, and then the role of higher ed in strengthening that workforce. And likewise, Dr. Sandra Dunnington will also, who is Vice President of Academic Affairs at Prince George's Community College, will also talk about the role of the community college in preparing our early childhood educators and also providing professional development and strengthening our workforce. And then Vivi Otero, who has a big title. She's president of Otero Strategy Group, former deputy mayor for Health and Human Services, and former founder for Centro Niña, which is an early childhood organization, 30 years old, that started in the District of Columbia, and they also have a center here in Maryland. The way that we're going to do this is we're asking each panelist to start off and offer for about 5 minutes from their vantage point, key issues in early childhood education. I will, in the spirit of being able to open up the conversation and really engage in a true conversation, I will let you know when you have 1 minute to go and when your time is up.
It's a smiley face on the top.
Please take it in the spirit of promoting conversation with the entire group. So, Marty, if you will start us off.
It just warms my heart that you're all here talking about early childhood education. What could be better? The Resource Center 25 years ago responded to a proposal that was put out by the state looking at how do we help parents on child care and how do we improve the quality of care in Prince George's County. Well, we were successful. It was a competitive bid, and really that's what we're still doing today. We are 25 years old, as I said, and we could not have survived without people like Rolf and the county exec who really understand and get what children need and get what family needs. So thank you both. To lay the foundation, 82% of children in Prince George's County have a mother in the workforce. Since we have the biggest supply of starter homes in the metro area, we also have the biggest demand for infant care. Now, infant care is incredibly expensive. In Prince George's County, family child care in the licensed setting is $192 per week. And in a center, it's $250 per week. It is 22% of the average family's income, with only housing being higher at 30%. We have 913 family child care homes and 448 centers. That number is decreasing, and it's decreasing by a lot. 913 child care centers and 448 licensed child care homes. And since you seem to love numbers, I did bring a demographics, and I will pass mine to you. So what is really alarming is that there is a subsidy for low-income families so that children can go into the licensed settings. In 2013, 1,117 child care settings were willing to take the purchase of care, the subsidy. Today, that's only 485, which means we are cutting out of the best quality care the children that most need it. Okay, and we can get into the reasons for that later. Quality issues. You heard that in school readiness that Prince George's County was at the bottom. We only have 34% of children ready to learn when they enter kindergarten. But the ray of sunshine is in childcare, in licensed childcare settings, that was 45%. So because of the man sitting to my left and his incredible commitment to making sure that childcare providers are must take training, the quality of childcare in licensed settings is going way up. And in private childcare, the numbers were better than, and I'm sorry, Laura, than in pre-K and Head Start, which is an incredible thing to say, because many of the staff do not have college degrees, but they are required to take a lot of training. Now, where they take the training is at the community college and at the resource center. We see probably 1,000 child care providers per year getting training. We also know that the training, the one-time workshops, that's great, but it's when we can come out and mentor on site and coach those providers, it really makes a difference. There are some interesting things going on, and several of us around the table are part of the Washington Area Women's Foundation, where they're focusing on workforce development and how can the pathways for early childhood staff, how can we help them? And the effort is to unify the requirements across the Washington metro area. This is a nationwide. This is an effort coming out of the National Academy of Medicine. A 700-page document. I don't know that anyone actually read it, but there is a 7-page executive summary. And this is going to be a year long, and we're hoping very well funded. And I will cede my minute to somebody else. I'm done. Okay.
Before we go on to Dr. Graffelner, I want to just have a few other folks introduce themselves so we know who's in the conversation. We'll start over here.
Sure. Good afternoon, good evening, folks. I'm Stephen Eubanks. I'm the chair of the Prince George County Board of Education.
Hi, my name is Sherelle Eubanks, and I work at the National Education Association, but I'm actually just here I'm a former early childhood educator. I work on early childhood policy at the NEA, so I'm just an observer.
Oh, I'm with Empire Gazette newspaper, John Quincy.
Monique Davis, Prince George's County Deputy Superintendent.
I think there's one more.
Good evening. My name is Erica Berry. I'm the Executive Director for the Prince George's County Board of Education.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. All right, thanks. Dr. Graffelner.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. Glad to be here to talk about a state perspective on early childhood education. I've been with the department for 22 years, and after all the early childhood programs were consolidated into the department in 2005, Dr. Grasmick, then the state superintendent, asked me to head that new division. And so we've been at this for 10 years, working on a very coordinated effort to bring all young children that are either enrolled in our public pre-kindergarten programs, child care programs, STAR programs, to a point where they come into school well prepared, have the skills and the disposition that you need as a student today. And we look at it long term. That means whatever happens when they come into school has some predictive validity in terms of how they're going to do in their next transition to middle school and then to high school, and how they graduate from public education. And we have actually data to show that there's a relationship. So what we're doing in early childhood education has a huge impact on the long-term school career of our students. So that's one point that I'd like to make. It's not just early childhood education in sort of a separate realm, but it is part of our education system. Although it looks very different because it is not the typical setup of a public school that has its organizational structure, it has its funding all set, it has the typical issues that are associated with providing some strong educational programming. It is made up of private, for-profit, non-profit, and the public sector. And so the challenge is to bring everybody sort of under one umbrella and to sort of work from the same sheet. The way we do this is to establish standards, the standards of learning, and they are being aligned to our K-12 standards. So we've just undergone the shift where with our Maryland College and Career Ready standards, we had more rigorous standards that needed to be articulated down to our early childhood community. And that was a big step that we needed to put in place so that kids come in with the skills that are now required in K-12 with those new standards. We also established standards and quality criteria for our programs. The way we do this is to started with our Race to the Top funding that we received to establish a quality rating and improvement system. And what this is like a scaffolding of quality. It's several tiers that are set up that define quality from the lowest tier, 1, to the highest tier at 5, to get programs eventually from the lowest to the highest tiers. And what that means is, and the theory of action here is, if you had those standards implemented in our early childhood programs, either in child care or in Head Start or in the public pre-kindergarten program, and you have high quality programs that children are enrolled in, your chances or your odds are better than the children coming in with better prepared. And if they come in better prepared, you have huge cost savings. You have children that are having successful experience. And then when you look at the business community, eventually students that come out of high school that are in general better prepared and have that foundation that started 13 years earlier. So we have established some performance measures that were referenced just a minute ago that really tell us how kids are doing when they come into school. And with the new standards, we had to go out and develop our new assessment, a kindergarten readiness assessment that we implemented now this past fall for the second year. The data that you saw is the first year data. We're just working and about to release the second year data. They look very different from what we had in our legacy system because they were aligned to the voluntary Maryland state curriculum. And they were that curriculum was very different than what we are working with right now. So the data that we had in Prince George's County of, I would think maybe 70% being ready, aligned to the old standards, translates now to these new standards. It's very different. It's just a higher bar. And I think it's the reality that we're working with, that we're working with this higher bar. I just wanted to say that this data is meant to be worked with. And I'm very pleased, Laura is here, who is working with leadership within her school system on setting up a task force after this shocking information came out of the department. I think it did, in the long run, will do something good because you have a more focused approach to turning this around and improving your outcomes for young children in the villages.
I'm going to do all you asked me to do in 5 minutes, but I'm going to try. The first thing I want to say is I'm appreciative that everybody's talking about school readiness, and I want to say, and this goes back to your point, Marty, that school readiness gaps really do start when children are 2 years old. We've got data that suggests that if you look at socioeconomic differences between middle-income children and low-income children, those differences really start in toddlerhood. So I want to push us to think, not just pre-K, although pre-K of course is important, but we have to go back. I also wanted just to say a little bit about quality, and I wanted to tell you all that quality really doesn't look so good when you think about it from a national level, that when you look at national programs, probably only about 1/3 are really good quality. I think we need to dig a little deeper and see what they are in Prince George's County, but Marty probably can talk to us about that. And some of the things that have come out about quality, I just wanted to run past you. One being that you have to have good structural factors, of course, like group size, and you have to have a certain teacher-child ratio and all of that. But one of the big controversial issues in the field is whether you need a BA. And as it turns out, the data are not really clear that a BA is necessary, although as many of you know, Head Start and everybody else is pushing us to that. But what seems to be particularly clear is that you have to have some kind of early childhood background, which is why this higher ed issue becomes so important, and I want to address that a little later. But the other thing that comes out of the work is that these process variables that you think about, like teacher-child interactions, and we all have to do class now, which is a particular assessment that's in the Head Start regs and other kinds of things, that when you look at things like emotional support and classroom organization, most programs, pre-K, child care, do really well. Where we don't do so well is instructional support. This is across the board, whether you're talking about county, state, or national. And what instructional support has to do with is teachers' capacity to do this kind of feedback looping, helping children expand their cognitive concepts, etc. And I wanted to raise that issue in particular related to curriculum. There is some data that our kind of global curricula that we really like to use don't really get us the bang for our buck, that when you see benefits of early care and education programs, particularly pre-K programs, what you see in terms of like math gains and literacy gains are those curricula that are very, very targeted to those kinds of issues. So I want to just help us think about, maybe we can talk about this, whether we can be more targeted in our curriculum. The other thing I wanted to say about quality curricula is that socio-emotional outcomes, as we know, socio-emotional readiness is critical. Some people suggest that that is even more predictive of later success than even these kind of cognitive kinds of things. But we don't do a really good job at measuring it, and it looks like in terms of our programs, it's again these very targeted curricula that seem to have an impact. The other thing I just wanted to bring up really quickly before I talk about workforce in our program is when you look at pre-K, you get a lot of bang when you have these curricula on top of these more global curricula, these more targeted curricula. In fact, if you all, any of you know, and I know Rolf knows the Boston study, they got like to 1 year of extra learning when children got exposed to these curricula, and they used building blocks for math and OWL for literacy. So I just wanted to put that out there. Quickly, in terms of workforce development, the data now are pretty clear that the trainings that all of us do, and I've done all my career, really don't get you a lot of bang for your buck. That what you really want to see is coaching and more in-classroom observations, video observations tied to certain kind of curricular goals, and that's what gets you what you want. I just wanted to say a word about our program and how we're trying to develop it. My dean is here, Donna. She sort of helped us to really rethink this, and we now have a brand new program, probably the only program like it in the state, and Rolf has been very supportive of our program, where we have an integrated early childhood special education program. Our students get dually certified now. This is our first year of this. Dually certified when they come out. They have both early childhood special education certification and early childhood education certification. The other thing I want to tell you is that we only focus on kids who are high risk. That's what we tell our nice little University of Maryland students. If you don't want to work with high-risk kids and within the Beltway schools, then you are in the wrong program. We focus a lot on English language learners, on children with disabilities. We also give them a variety of placement experiences, which some of the data you all might know suggests that you can't just talk at students, you have to get them out in the classrooms. So they're out in the classrooms from their sophomore year through their senior year. They do infant toddler placements, they do preschool placements, they do kindergarten placements, they do 1 to 3 placements. So I know Shehan is telling me to shut up, but you shouldn't have asked me to say so much, but anyway, we'll talk later.
You're going to integrate it into the
okay.
Thank you so much. Dr. Dunning.
Good evening. At Prince George's Community College, we have multiple programs that are designed to prepare those who want to work in the early childhood education environment. And at a community college, we have what we call 2 sides of the house. We have non-credit and we have credit. So in the non-credit area, we have 1 program, and it's a program that probably, in light of some national trends, we may want to take another look at. It is a 90-hour program that prepares workers to go into the early childhood setting, largely as aides. It does at least give people an entry into that environment, but what we find as we follow students who leave that program, as with many entry-level positions, the wages are pretty low and there is dramatic turnover. We are trying to build a bridge or develop a little bit of a career ladder between that non-credit program and our credit programs, which is the other side of the house, so that perhaps students who finish that program can move on into the credit side of the program and build on what they learned and perhaps keep them in the early childhood environment by giving them additional education. Now, in the credit side of the program, we have 2 associate degree programs. One is an Associate of Applied Science degree in early childhood education. That program largely prepares students to go into early child care centers as either a teacher, a lead teacher, an assistant teacher, and in some cases, a director. The other program that we have is a program that would link to a program like the one at the University of Maryland. It is an Associate of Arts in Teaching in Early Childhood Education / Special Education. And students who are in those programs can transfer through an articulation agreement to any of the public 4-year schools in Maryland that have bachelor's programs in teaching. We have currently maybe about 500 students in the year who have enrolled in the 90-hour program. We have about 370 students maybe who are focusing on early childhood education in the associate degree programs. We also have a number of certificates that focus on various aspects of ECE, such as mastery and administration of child care programs. Students in the degree programs can take this cluster of courses, and all those courses then apply toward their degree, but it also gives them a focused area, particularly when they are going out for employment. We also have a link with the public school system. We have an articulation agreement for students who are in the teacher academies in the public school system through our CTE Perkins program, that if those students complete all the coursework that they are required to complete and then come to us within 2 years with a 2.5 GPA, once they actually apply, take their first courses with us, we will transfer in, we will give them 9 credits because they have done equivalent work in the high school setting. So that is a good way to get some of those students to move on to us and get a little bit of a head start, if you will. And I think I'm going to say just one other very small thing, and sitting here makes me think as we are having some discussions with the public school system about developing a middle college in teacher education, and we have yet to set the precise direction of that. I believe maybe ECE is one of the things we should look at. Very good, and I'll stop there.
So I'm between you and between this panel and the question, so let me be. So, Connie asked me to talk a little bit about models and financing and how all of that fits. And Dr. Queen, you stated early on that you were really, what this was about is figuring out how we do lasting, sustainable systems. So I wanted to step back a little bit and talk about what is it when we begin to talk about systems and systems of care and then the funding around that. The good news is that everybody in the country right now is looking at this in a very different way than I think has been in the past, and for a number of reasons, right? The president has challenged us to look at this throughout and has done a significant amount of investments around there. Head Start and Early Head Start has revised and revamped the block grants and so on. So there's lots of things happening across the country, and so there are a lot of people to learn from who are doing and thinking about this in the same way. The other is that you're sitting around the table here with what is already the start of what should be the way to think about it nationally, and that is all of your systems around the table looking at early childhood education and development. And I talk about early childhood education as development because I'm an old hand early childhood person. And so I don't want us to move too fast to the early childhood education piece and forget the development piece, which is what those of us who are diehard early childhood people really don't want people to forget. And that is what is really evident when you look at the data that Marty talked about, which is our child care development centers are doing pretty good. And in fact, in some cases, they're doing better than our public school system. I just looked at the data in the District of Columbia today, and it's exactly the same. And why is that, and what is it that our early childhood providers and teachers have that our teachers who are coming into the classroom as teachers with degrees don't have? And how do we then look at blending this in some way that there's a skill set that's necessary across the two? So I think those are the really critical piece. And I look around this table and you've got Health and Human Services, you've got your public school system, you've got higher education, and I don't know if health is here, but at least you've got the hat for all of those. So it's really important as we look at this to think about this as a system. And if it's going to be sustainable long-term and an impact that you want to see 10 years down the road, 15 and 20 years down the road, you've got to begin to think about what your systems are that are in place and how those have to change. If we stick to only the early childhood lens of child care, that is one very small aspect of early childhood education and development. Your health systems, whether it is your home visitation, your primary health clinics, your pediatricians, and what are they doing and what is their role and what is their role when they are doing assessments for children. What is that communication from the pediatrician to the child development center to the early childhood programs, and what are those links? And at the core of it is data. Your population data is what should drive where, how, and what investments you're making. And so it's great to have kind of after the fact data in terms of kindergarten assessments, but I would really urge the county to look at population data and look at who's doing this out of UCLA, for example, some of the work at UCLA on population data that helps us really look at where our children, what is the situation and what is the condition of our children, because no one can fund everything for every child. We know that in every jurisdiction. And so that population data really is very helpful to help determine where your investments begin. and where your investments are best utilized. As it was said earlier by Tahani, and I know that the county executive went to visit, my old place, Centronia, and it is the work that we were doing at Centronia to try to show a model of what an integrated services system looks like. What we built there was starting with a very basic childcare work and moving towards integrating health systems, mental health, early Head Start, and what that led to is 52 funding sources that I had to manage. Private donations, private foundations. So, any CEO would tell you that's crazy. And here I was, a child development person with 52 funding sources. So the other piece of this is looking at your systems and looking at how to blend your money in a way that doesn't put that load on directly on your providers. How do you, and Rolf knows I was doing magic over there in Central in terms of doing that. So looking at the systems piece, which parts of your system are actually focused on early childhood development or should be? Are you using Medicaid dollars to pay for home visitation? Where are your dollars, and then how are they targeted, and then how are they blended? And I'll use one example of how we did that in the district, was with the Head Start blending in the public school system. We took all of our Title I schools, put all of the children who were in a Head Start classroom and in a traditional public school classroom, and those are those children and these are our children kind of thing, blended all of that together, put all of those children under the per pupil formula, and use the Head Start dollars for the wraparound services. So you have a comprehensive system of services for 3 and 4-year-olds for every Title I school in the District of Columbia, by having blended those dollars and not putting that burden on the schools themselves. So they're like that in a number of different models around the work. And my time's up. And when we get a chance, somebody asked me about shared services and cost modeling. And cost modeling, so I can talk about this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you.
Yeah, so that was amazing. So you've made the case, right? And I appreciate this sort of, what is the result that we seek here? And if it's to get children ready, what does that actually mean? What are the indicators? What are the population indicators that we can look at to sort of guide our path to the right strategies, to the right systems change and alignment, so that we have this comprehensive care, this wraparound service, so that at 2 years old, we're catching kids so that they're ready to move into school. So given all of that, bring it back locally for us. So, what does that mean for us in Prince George's? How do we make that tactical? How do we wrap our hands around something like that?
I can start. Every year I've been in this business, I have taken that, where do we start, to a lower age level. To the point where I now have a program called Healthy Families, where we're working with pregnant women. Because if that woman does not have good nutrition and seeing the doctor, that child's not going to ever be ready for school. So we work with 150 families that are the most at risk in the county to teach parenting, to teach, talk about bonding, talk about, and when the baby is born, read to the child from day one. Develop language. I'm at the point where 2 years old is even too late.
You want babies to be born healthy.
Yeah. Healthy and language. Yeah.
Language predicts everything.
Yeah.
It does. It predicts everything. It predicts behavior problems. It predicts literacy. It predicts self-regulation. It predicts everything.
Language in what sense?
Oral language. Oral language. So what Marty's talking about, which I totally agree with you, is, getting parents in early care and education providers, which, I've been in a lot of child care places, and you see very nice, well-meaning people talking to each other and not talking to the little kids. And we know that that doesn't support the kind of language development we need for children. But it is really the most important predictor of everything.
I wanted to get back to the funding. Vivi was is absolutely right. And I come from a European model where everything is sort of block grant in terms of getting formula grant for programs, and then there's a parental copay. This could drive you really nuts because the 52 funding sources. We are experiencing that right now with our expansion, with our pre-kindergarten expansion. In fact, the Lieutenant Governor was really on board last year, 2 years ago now, when he was really going toward a universal pre-kindergarten concept. And he was instrumental in getting a legislation through that would expand pre-kindergarten in the state of Maryland and put $4.3 million behind it. And what that meant for us in Maryland was that pre-kindergarten, which was a state Board of Education initiative originally, and under the auspices of the local departments of education, really had a way to get to community-based programs as long as they met the same standards. And so we were able to get to these programs. But you know, they are telling us that even if you give us this public funding and then built in that pre-kindergarten block in your thing, you get funding from us too. It is for many of the directors a challenge to make this work in the budget. So there's that issue. So we need to think about.
It's not enough. The per pupil cost is much higher, and that's why I want somebody to ask me that cost model.
Yeah, the thing is, you know, yeah, right. Because her families are in need of having something from 7 o'clock in the morning till 6.
Yeah.
We can give you a portion of that,
Right.
and we have to trace that money down to make sure that it's for free public pre-kindergarten block of time. Could be 6.5 hours of the 10-hour day. And so, yeah, so you need to find some funding from other sources. And that shuttle, that making it work for the family, low-income families, is a challenge. The other piece I wanted to say, Montgomery County has done the same thing that you did in DC. They have done it under Reese in 2001. They took their Head Start money, they took their pre-kindergarten money, and if you go into any school, it wouldn't be called a Head Start classroom or a pre, it would be all together. And so you can leverage funding, the pre-kindergarten funding you have out of the school district, plus the Head Start funding, and then you offer the wraparound services through community organizations or some other. I mean, there's a way to make that a little bit more coordinated and you know, in a blended fashion. And it's probably long-term better because then you have consistent standards that apply. Professional development is done, and so the federal government is all behind that kind of concept. So I think there's no reason not to do it.
Let me pick up on that for a minute and also sort of go back to stressing the systems approach and the long-term approach, because what we haven't paid attention to, and now states are beginning to see this, is that as you move your 4-year-olds, and in some cases 3-year-olds, into your public school system, you debilitate your community-based system, because 4-year-olds, babies are much more expensive than 4-year-olds. You have a different ratio, you have different requirements, different group sizes, and so on. And so as you think about, and this is not at all to say not moving children into the pre-K system, into your public school system, but it is to pay attention to what that does to your infrastructure in terms of your infants and toddlers and 3-year-olds, if that's the case. And so the shift becomes from $17,000 a year per child for an infant to $22,000 when you've eliminated your 3s and 4-year-olds. And so part of what I talk about in terms of this cost modeling is that at a national level, and now it's allowed as part of the federal grant, for states to really look at modeling cost as opposed to market rate. We keep talking about market rate, which is artificial, right? And really looking at costing out, so that going into a strategy of really looking at the actual cost of care will help you build a system that's really based on what your real costs are, as opposed to what you may be getting from looking at market rate or looking at what providers are currently. Providers charge what parents can pay. So it's not what the real cost is, and when you begin to do the quality requirements that are part of your system, then that really puts providers in a real bind. So that's part of it, and certainly something that there are people nationally who can help do that.
Thank you. We're going to open up now.
Question sort of related to quality. Maryland has a quality rating system. One of the challenges, it's been a long time for me when I was looking for early childhood education settings for my own children at the time. NAUIC accreditation was what you would be looking for because the quality rating system had been invented. But there were very few centers in Prince George's County that were NAUIC accredited. So I'd like to know how many centers in Prince George's County meet the highest quality rating with the current QRIS system, because that was one of the things that I felt like Prince George's County really needs to focus on, getting more centers at the highest, or at least the second highest level of the quality rating.
Yeah, I have some numbers here. I thought that question would come up. In Excels, we have 808 programs that are participating or are being published. Let me make the point. Participating means you basically sign up, you register, you have 12 months to get published. That means you decide what level you're going to be published at. If you reach the level 2 or 3 and it's validated, then you can be published at that particular level. So that means that there is some delay involved in getting programs to be published at higher levels, unless they come in already with certain quality features or being accredited. That usually gets them going. Yeah, there are very few. That has to do with Excel. Started in July of 2013. So that's only a little more than 2 years old. So we have right now 70% of all centers in the state of Maryland participating and published. They're basically working on getting to be published. So you will see maybe in a year or two more programs that are up there. But we do have a challenge, and that's true, and that relates to what Bibi is talking about. The cost of improving your quality, as we found out through a study that was done by a consultant related to the adequacy study that's on pre-kindergarten, is very high. If you're at the cost for running a program at level 1, meaning in good standing and licensed, as opposed to running a program at level 5, there's a significant difference in the cost of care for your student and for your child, and that is one of the reasons why programs are impeded from moving up, especially the smaller ones. So if you have in Prince George's County your small child care provider, centers, maybe with 60 or 80 children enrolled, their effort to move up the steps is going to be considerably more challenging than a franchise like KinderCare or whatever you have in your county that could scale economy, get to a point where they can invest into their programs a lot easier. So I think there's some of that is happening, but I'm absolutely in agreement that we need to really put effort into getting programs up the tiers.
But do we have any NAC accredited programs in the counties? Do we know
yes,
about
we do, and we have even nationally validated family child care providers in the community.
Do we know how many, just to answer the question directly?
On the accredited side, there are programs, I know that we have published programs, 368 published programs, but most of them are level 1 and 2. Very
And that's
few
Prince
at the
George's
higher
County,
level.
or is that statewide?
Pardon me?
Is that Prince George's County?
Prince George's.
Okay.
And so I can get back with you on the numbers of accredited programs, because you have programs that are accredited in Excel, and we have other programs that are accredited that are not accredited.
Thank you. Thank you. But it was Vivi and then Dr.
I'm trying to wait for my commissioners, but I would just love to jump in this conversation. It's such a great conversation. And I really appreciate it. We've had a very interesting debate on the Board of Education over the last year or so about the concept of universal pre-K that you've talked about. And the board has pretty much jumped on the idea for all of the reasons that kind of make sense at first. We talked about the cost of pre-K and, you know, we're the providers, we should be able to provide universal access to keep pre-K, it should be free. But when you really start peeling the onion, it's a lot more complex than that. I mean, we started with the fact that when you look at the data, our public pre-K programs are not necessarily performing at a level higher than what's happening elsewhere in the community.
Because universal pre-K assumes that everybody's going to get free, and maybe in pre-K it's time for all of our pre-Ks to move into our public school system, and that's what you should be looking at in terms of your school budget and making sure that more children and that you're doing the kind of quality work that needs to be done, and that your pre-Ks in the schools are required to meet quality standards like anybody else. So that, and that your principals are trained to understand what it means to have little children in their school buildings. That's a huge, huge piece, right? I remember teaching a 4-year-old right out of Maryland. In fact, I graduated from the University of Maryland School of Education. And they didn't know what to do with us when we were teaching little kids. So I think that you've got to determine universality, and then you've got to look at your funding, and you've got to figure out who needs the most and who do you serve first. Even the president stayed away from using the word universal. He really, it really is about who needs the access and how do we work on that. But the other flip side of it is how it affects the rest of your system. And it really, you can't, I don't think, I've been told that I say you all the time. But anyway, it's a language issue. It's my second language.
Okay.
I just attribute it all to my second language. This is why I talk about a systemic approach, because if the school system makes a decision on their own without having had a system-wide process, then what other aspects of your system are being impacted? And then what you find yourself having to do is reactive to what was created by another part of your system. And this is why it's got to be a comprehensive approach, and you've got to look at it across the board. Rolf talked about cost and the ability to meet cost based on quality. One of the things that is happening across the country and that is catching a lot of momentum is this shared services idea. Because as you fund programs, as the state or the local jurisdiction funds programs, if you're funding all of these very small programs and they all are using some of that funding to build infrastructures, you are using a lot of your money for infrastructure rather than in the classroom direct instruction. And so what are the ways in which you can help build, as part of your policy, a shared services model for family daycare home providers and and it would help Marty a lot in her work, and for child development centers. And that basically means building a back office type of support, but there are also the pieces around staff development and recruitment and staff recruitment, staff training, and eligibility if you're having your centers do their own eligibility and so on. So there are good models across the country that are doing this, in particular for family daycare homes in Seattle, in Fairfax, and others. But and in the district, we have a model for quality improvement networks that have just been created that bring in 10 centers under an organization and begin to provide at those times. But that is another sort of, you can do it as a cost savings and an efficiency piece and build it as part of your overall system. You're in such a great place right now to be able to think about all those things before you go to a full-blown system. That is very exciting.
Brenda.
Can I answer it?
Please.
I want to address it from a data point of view. I feel like when you look at the data, and I want to refer you, I know Tehani's taking notes, but the Yoshikawa et al. Brief that was done by the Foundation for Child Development, which is like my go-to paper, 2013, for the benefits of public pre-K. And I think that this is a nonpartisan, research-based brief that points to the benefits of public pre-K hands down. And if you think about all of our war on poverty programs, Head Start and all those kinds of things, the one that really seems to be able to decrease the achievement gap is high-quality, center-based pre-K program. So even though I'm an infantile person, I'm where Marty is, if I was, had a magic wand, I would make sure at least every poor child in this county had an opportunity to high quality, that's the thing, high quality public pre-K. That's what I would do, because in those center-based facilities, they get the opportunity to get the stimulation that they may not get at home. So the data are pretty clear. I mean, Heckman's won a Nobel Peace Prize or whatever he was. What was it? Yeah, not the Peace Prize. He won the Nobel Economics Prize for, not only showing that it helps children get more school ready, but when you look at long-term outcomes, you get these life course outcomes for these children. And he's done a cost-benefit analysis that got him a Nobel Prize. But the other point I just wanted to make, back to your data point about how public pre-K kids might not look so good as other children, the data, this goes back to your point, we need to know who these people are, because we know that people make different choices, and I think we have to, before we, so that's all.
Marty, we're going to go to Marty and then take a question.
And there may be models that are not either or, but both, where the school system can take over a classroom within a private center and raise that whole center up. Create a classroom within a private center where the teacher and training and some of the infrastructure comes in, and that really truly lifts that entire center up. So there may be models that we can look at that say, we can do both. We can support the private industry, and it really cuts out the rent and overhead for the school system when you're walking into an existing center.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Dr. D's point for, universal child care or pre-K. I went to DC public schools. My kids went there early on, and I've seen a sea change in involvement from parents, grants, and everything once the recession hit and those middle-class families brought their kids to the public schools. And I know you guys base a lot of things on studies, so I want to say, I know there's a 2007 Connecticut study that you guys may be familiar with, and it found that poor children who attended economically mixed pre-kindergarten classes progressed from well below the national average in crucial language skills to just above it during the course of the school year, while those in low-income only classes remained below the norm. A study in Boston reached the same conclusion. I also want to say that there was an economic analysis done that was prepared for by the World Bank, and it concluded that the poor are actually worse off when a program like Head Start targets them exclusively. So I just want to say that if we're talking about children being ready, or kids being ready, I think we need to pay more attention to mixing these classes. My children, I have 2 children that go to Ardmore Elementary School. And they're in the 2nd and the 6th grade. And the school is divided in a way that there are 3 6th grade classes. A class called the Ravens, one called the Cardinals, and one called something else. The Ravens are the top tier students. The other kids are the lower tier students. I see when I go to honor roll assemblies how only the Ravens are on honor roll, and then you might got 5 from this class and 4 from the lower tier classes. And what that teaches me and what shows me is pretty sad to me that this is the situation in Prince George's County, because I feel as though the children are never meant to go ahead. Like there is nothing to push them to get further. So the lower tier kids usually stay at the lowest tier. Because there's nothing to push them further. Whereas I see my child that goes to Bishop McNamara, because the choice was Herbert Flowers, she got accepted to that program as well, but my choice was to put her in Bishop McNamara because I thought the curriculum was a little bit more challenging. But I see when the classes are mixed, and even my experience in DC public schools, Ludlow Television is a really well-off school, when the classes are mixed, the kids kind of compete with each other. So the lowest, it's not really children that perform, even the lowest level is not really low compared to the kids I see in Prince George's County. So I just want to say, in thinking about universal child care, I just wanted to tell you guys those statistics and those studies to say that if the way that it benefits the poorest children, I think that's the easiest way to get this 34% up to a higher number and to make sure that you get parent involvement.
It's just the population of those various prior care settings, and then we control for low income.
Okay, great.
And what we find out that we've done this with the old legacy system every year, and it's always the same result. Those low-income kids in the nursery schools that ends up to be at the higher end are doing a lot better. The next group are the low-income kids in childcare centers. And I think it makes the case that you just made, because it's mixed group. It's a cross section in terms of income, background. It's very mixed, and so these kids are not dependent on the, if you will, instructional program only. They are getting a lot of feedback through their conversations with their peers.
Other questions?
And maybe not just the conversation with their peers, but the resources of some of those other parents
Right.
in these
It's
other
more
programs.
holistic,
Yeah.
It really begs the question about concentrated poverty in neighborhoods, which then creates schools where the majority of the kids are coming out of concentrated care. Now, if you have child development centers, it's a little different because it broadens, as I said here. But where you have challenges in public education, obviously, is where you have concentration of poverty in those neighborhoods. I don't want us to not at the very least mention toxic stress and the importance of paying attention to the effects of poverty in children, and really making sure that we're having the conversation about what those are and how we are looking at our programs and our wraparound services, our comprehensive services in those child development centers, in particular for children who are coming out of poverty and stress situations. So many of your second language learners who are coming out of communities of war and stress, and many of your poor children. So that it's really critical for your health and mental health folks to be at the table, really thinking about that piece of the work, and as part of the training for your teachers also.
Right, I mean, I think for us, I think that's one of the reasons when we talk about our Transforming Neighborhoods initiative, it really is based on all of those things, the wraparound services, because you're absolutely right. It takes into consideration not only the health and human services, family services portion of it, but public safety, but also environmental issues, economic issues, which gets us to access to jobs, transportation, housing. Because you're right, a lot of it is you have concentrated, poverty around housing issues, which then has an impact on the schools. Whether you go, we always found that when we first came out here with our children is whether you were inside the Beltway or outside. We were always inside the Beltway. But, our youngest child was actually shipped outside the Beltway to Bowie. And you could just tell her education from her siblings in the same household. It's almost night and day. So the ones who walked to the local school, which was basically concentrated by the time our middle child got there, was basically concentrated with maybe a few of us parents who were from single family households, with the majority being those parents from apartments and single income, to the one where we shipped out to Bowie, which was walking from dual parent households. It was just, you could just see it there. So that's why for us and I think this is a great discussion, because how do we make it work for Prince George's County? And how do we make it work in context of there's unlimited resources? Because if you had all the money in the world, you could probably come up with, a situation where it worked. But how do you look at where we are and say, okay, long-term strategy-wise, it's really to change the economic dynamics around certain neighborhoods so it is more mixed. Short-term, how do you so part of the long-term strategy for change of economics around how do you have neighborhoods that are mixed are the schools. So right now, we've got a major project, with this major project we're doing in Suitland. I can talk all day to tell people that that really is the next hot area. But convincing, young parents to move over there when they look at the schools, not crime, because you can go show them crime has gone down. It really is their perception of what the schools are like. But telling them, you know what, if you actually move there and we mix the schools up, that's going to have an impact to make us move up faster. So the question for us in government is what's the dynamics that both from the school system, which, as we all said, has to continue educating children throughout, and they have a limited amount of money. Sounds like a lot, but it isn't. The county has a limited amount of money, and the state has a limited amount of money which they're willing to get, and private grants are limited. So how do we do this great work with those dynamics?
Affordable childcare for a
Yeah.
young family is probably one of the single predictors in terms of they're paying 40% of their salary in childcare. So making the childcare affordable. I mean, you've got to look at New Jersey with the Abbott schools, right? And New Jersey went through a lawsuit, and what integrated their neighborhoods? That wasn't what the intent was. They had a lawsuit and they had to pay for access to early childhood education. And those neighborhoods were in their poorest neighborhoods. And what happened in those neighborhoods? They became middle class and integrated neighborhoods because people moved there because they had affordable childcare. It was neighborhood based, and they had to provide it in those neighborhoods. So, as an economic driver, early childhood education is absolutely an economic driver. It helps parents stay in their jobs. We know from studies that parents who have high quality, affordable childcare will retain jobs, especially entry-level jobs, for a longer period of time and sustain those jobs, because those jobs generally don't have benefits. And then people who have to leave because their care provider didn't show up, or their grandma couldn't take care of the baby that day, or whatever, will lose their jobs and move backward. People who have affordable, quality, high-quality childcare, they can count on, which goes back to Rolf's point about why 7 to 6, are folks who will be able to stay and progress in their jobs. And eventually move into being able to sustain their families better. And we've seen this from economic studies after economic study on early childhood education. So it is one of your major economic drivers, in fact, if you want to keep and bring young families in.
You also say the school district money. It's got a very high cost benefit analysis. You identify children early on and give them the services that they need when they're 2, 3, or 4. It cuts back on special education and all the other things that school districts are spending a ton of money on. Sorry.
Thank you. Marty and then Rolf, and then did you have a question, Cheryl?
I did, but
Okay.
they can go ahead.
Okay, that was New Jersey, but we don't have to go that far. Just our neighboring county, Montgomery County, has a project called the Working Parent Project, which subsidizes the child care voucher. And I know, I've heard for years, the tax base and all of that, but they prioritize children and children from working families, so that those children whose parents cannot afford $250 a week can put their children in licensed childcare.
A couple things.
I'm sorry, that's a subsidy that Montgomery County government does.
It's a supplement.
Right, yeah. So they supplement what you pay. So if you went to Centralia and you can only afford this, then Montgomery County government would come in and pay for that. Pay for a portion of it from their tax base, revenues, taxes.
Similar to the district of Columbia has a $38 million fund that it provides subsidy up to 300% of poverty. And on top of it, they use $30 million of their TANF dollars. So the fund is $68 million for local subsidy for childcare.
And BB, don't they add that to the pre-K dollars too? Don't they add some of the,
Yes.
the child care dollars added to the pre-K?
It's added to that, but the 68 million is strictly your local dollars and your TANF dollars.
So Bibi, in the district and in Montgomery County, is that subsidy paid to the provider, to the providers directly? No, or it's paid to the parent?
Well, in Maryland, it's to the parent.
In
The
the
parent can
district-
choose where they want to
Okay.
attend childcare.
You know, we're starting up, just this is having an effect, the lack of quality, affordable daycare is having an effect on safety of children. And we're trying to tell parents to be careful about who cares for your child. But then again, we know these parents can't pay for quality daycare, so we're in.
And you don't have enough managers.
We
Most
have,
jurisdictions.
we don't. So we're really in a catch-22.
Just so the funding, first of all, your point is very well taken. Baltimore City did this several years ago with the Superintendent Alonso. He basically had in every school, even Roland Park, the pre-kindergarten programs in there. And suddenly there was an increase in enrollment in public schools. It turned that around. And that's true in DC. The DC in the 90s built out the early childhood system, and it's exactly what happened. And those families then stayed in the system at least through the elementary school years. We have had conversations with the mayor from College Park and with Senator Rosapep about taking a building that was basically in Woodbridge, as my understanding, it used to be an elementary school, now it's with the county, and turn that into an early childhood center in College Park that would be sort of a center for, an early learning center for the community there. So that's another way. This is a proven strategy to get middle-class families into certain neighborhoods, and a number of examples in how this works. As far as what to do with limited resources and with all the smorgasbord of offerings you have and services, and everybody basically has not enough to do what they needed to do, I think you really need to look at a sort of a very comprehensive, county-wide strategic focus and look at what you want as a county. Not what you're going to do with this funding source and with this funding source, and how you're going to get, satisfaction in some corners, not in others, and then basically execute that. And that is maybe an approach that will bring in folks that, because with the strategic event, you get some coverage in the news, you might get some foundations in that want to help. In fact, we were approached by the Weinberg Foundation, and they only invest in in Baltimore. And they said, they asked Dr. Lowry when she was still around, and I was part of the meeting, and said, where would you go? And we suggested Prince George's County to create an educator learning network center. And that is something that can be done relatively easy by using your existing school construction process. You can take in any renovation, in any new building, and build an early learning center right next on the grounds, or as an annex of a school, and then basically tap into state education, construction, school construction dollars. Now, I know there are priorities, there are certain schools, but that's an opportunity. And in this case, Weinberg would be on board to help out.
I just think this is about the subsidies. Are there any examples of kind of the opposite? What we have in our public school system is it's all income based. So all of our pre-K programs are income based. Do you know of any public school programs that treat pre-K like your lunch program? Where if you can't afford it, it's free, but if you can, you pay, like you have a free lunch, reduced lunch, or full price lunch. Are there public school systems that do that in pre-K? Free pre-K, reduced price pre-K, or full pre-K?
Yeah, pre-K is part of it, yeah. In the public school.
In the public school, right.
Yeah.
Public school pre-K. Because right now, all we have is income based. So if you don't meet a certain income criteria, you can't enter our program at all. And so.
But there is one for childcare. There is a similar, the school lunch program that you're referring to, there is one for childcare. It's the child Medicare food program, and a lot of child care programs.
But his question is whether there's a mirror in paying for
Paying for pre-K, so.
You're trying to get the diversity in the.
Right now, all we have is low-income
Right.
families in our pre-K program. And I'm saying we could, and then we have programs where we could subsidize low-income families to go into daycare. What I'm interested in doing is having middle-class families pay to come to public schools. And so I know that's kind of blasphemous, but you know, it's just a thought.
It's interesting.
There are models like that.
Okay.
Queen Anne's County tried this.
Who?
Queen Anne's
Queen
County
Anne's.
tried it. That's across the bridge. And Eastern Shore, they wanted to offer it to anybody. So they had extra space, classroom available, and said, so if you're above the eligibility guidelines that we have with the program, you can basically have pre-kindergarten, and you cover the costs for pre-kindergarten. Now what they did, which didn't work, they used their per student amount for doing that. That is way too high. So it fell apart. But it is an option, and it's, in fact, there's a study that was done, the adequacy study, that was done on pre-kindergarten that does take into account the scaling up of pre-kindergarten universal, is to have parent coverage above a certain income level, so that you would have relief for the state and the local government to support this.
What's the name of it? What's the study?
This is the study that was done on pre-kindergarten by Augenblick, is the consultant, and it's related to the adequacy study. Thornton 2? Does that ring a bell? Yeah, okay.
Sure, I want to just have a question. I had a question, and maybe because I don't know everyone around the table. I was just wondering about, it speaks to a question about the comprehensive services and the nature to which services are comprehensive in Prince George's County. I wasn't sure if someone was here from like Health and Human Services or a federal or government agency that maybe have auspices over parent home visiting, because I think there are opportunities there to sort of make sure that, you know, that children, number one, are identified and that they're served and that they're identified at an early age, even the social service providers, for example, when I lived in Massachusetts, if a mother came in to get WIC, then she was automatically identified for other services that included early childhood, because her children were more likely at risk for some one thing or another. So there are various entry points to identify children and provide them with some services. It may or may not be early childhood. It could be parent home visiting. It could be, IDEA Part C. It could be other things. And how does the county sort of approach identifying children early on and then connecting them with all of the plethora of existing services that it could include early learning, but also could include other type of care and services?
Well, Marty can probably answer that, at least with respect to home visiting, and I know we provide some wraparound services with home visiting.
But I think
Yes,
you're talking
but-
about she's talking about a triage
She's
system
talking
where
about a
you get
system of
primary
care.
prevention, where you locate, identify the families in like a primary care.
Right, you come in for one service,
Right.
and that triggers you to, you're right, it triggers you to these other things that will come in there. And so the question for us, and we can find out, I'm sure, Gloria will know where, or what.
It's probably abuse or neglect, which is too late, way too late.
Right, but.
And Rick.
Right, I mean.
I was more so speaking for children who aren't abused and neglected, might be at risk for not being ready for school because they are in poverty or in a single parent home or have a language delay or might be on the autism
Right, I mean, we
spectrum
do it.
or.
The notion under T&I is that something should trigger the rest of these things happening. And you do.
I just want to add, within our school system with various programs, we have, especially Head Start, special education, we do it all the time. We have a memorandum of understanding that we work with the Department of Social Services. Immediately, as soon as we get the information that a parent is signing up for that, it immediately goes to Head Start, and we go on to the next area, what we need to do. So we do that right now with our school system. And the Judy Centers, of course, and I'm sorry, I should have meant that because it's one of my programs too. But the Judy Center, of course, we do it.
And Healthy Families takes the attitude of prevention. So if the mom has these multi-problems, there's an assumption that it will be passed down. So we work with the mom with hopefully in the first trimester to avoid, and she gets all the services that she needs.
I just wanted to say that there are models and other places that do exactly what you want, like Durham Connects, where they identify the moms at the hospital. Everybody gets a universal home visit, whether you're rich, poor, toxic stress or not. And then the moms who are identified as at risk, they might end up at a Healthy Families, or they might end up at an early Head Start. But that kind of primary prevention triage network the Durham Connects project has some pretty nice data that they can improve kids' outcomes across the board, health, cognitive, social, emotional, everything. And so that, I think there are just plenty of models like that across the country, which could be replicated here as well.
So, Cheryl, honestly, the answer is other than the ones that you said, we don't have a standard system. And we obviously need to put one in place.
Talking about an integrated system.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's really what you're saying, with multiple. And so you don't have to have in the abuse system or whatever, but it's really, I think, important to make the distinction between an integrated system of care versus a comprehensive system of care, right? The comprehensive services is, do you have all the services available?
Right.
And the integrated system, are these services connected? One of the worst things we do for poor families in particular is that we overwork them by having 15 different social workers, right? You have a home visitor for early Head Start, you have a home visitor here, you have a social worker, you gotta tell 5 people your life story before anybody will give you a service. And so an integrated system really looks at the family and where they are, and then builds around that family whatever the set of supports are that family needs.
Through one door.
Yes,
Through one
that's
door.
the
Yes, but even more so with Jerome.
One system.
Right.
It's multiple doors to one system.
Right. It's almost what we would do, even more so than TNI, what we would do with our with DPI. So if you're doing permitting here in your business, what we've done is rather than you go to 7 different places to get permitted, you just go one, and there's a trigger point. But the most important thing that Dr. Eubanks said, this Dr. Eubanks, not that guy, is the trigger points. You know, that it automatically triggers when you hit this. And I think that's the thing, the services are available. And that's why we talk about TNI a lot, is that the whole notion of TNI is that the same services always have been there. The problem is in the communities that we're looking at, they don't access it the way that it should be accessed, or the way that they would if they were in another community, if they were in a upper middle class community, knew how to access these things. It's the notion that we get them to the point where we're triggering that all of these things are there. That's why everybody from the government, whether they are from the traditional people, which are social services, family services, health department, schools, that's why the people from finance and accounting who don't want to be there are there. Because you don't know where to access for funding sources. And so, but that's the same way, you're right, that if we could have that integrated care where someone comes in, and we're trying to do this around domestic violence.
And behavioral health,
Right.
we're trying to do it around all the issues like this.
Well, but even more so like behavior, it's not so much that when somebody comes in, there's a problem, you say, okay, that's behavioral issues or domestic violence. It's what are some trigger points before they get to it that we're trying to identify so you get the services to the family to prevent it. And one of the things we're looking at in the domestic violence standpoint is, what are trigger points that will get all these services going in?
But where you really want to go in order to reduce your cost is to avoid ever getting to those trigger points. And so,
Well, but by trigger
building
point, but I get what you're saying, but by trigger point, what I mean is there is something that identifies before that
I get
happens.
that. But building your protection system, building your, as Marty was talking about, sort of coming from a strength-based perspective, which builds all of your prevention work. So this takes us back to the early childhood work, right? A family comes into a child development center with a baby because they need a child care provider because they have to go to work.
Right.
That is already a prevention step. That isn't targeting their mental health or this or that. It's in that context that is supporting that family and that child that you can then, if needed, get to certain services. But you've already built a prevention system in place where parents begin to, and with their children. And schools play that a very similar role because everybody goes to school, right? And so at the same time as you're looking at your, what I would call more your tertiary care kinds of supports, it's really your prevention supports and what, and how do you really reduce these numbers here? And we know this in safety, we know this in everything, right? You either put all your money in tertiary care, which is much more expensive, or you put it in prevention, where it's a lot cheaper, and as you said, it reduces long-term costs like special education and others. So I think it's really making sure that we're taking a look at this from the prevention eye in particular.
I've been thinking as you're talking about this, and the way we get our referrals of healthy families is not at this level, but it's the direct service people. A school counselor or teacher will notice that 14-year-old is suddenly wearing baggy clothes. She's probably pregnant. Or, the person who's kind of clumsy, no one's that clumsy, probably a victim of domestic violence. There is a network of hands-on workers that work together. And that's where we get more referrals than we can serve. And that's where we have at the Family Support Center, which is in Langley Park, which is in TNI neighborhood, a quarterly advisory board meeting. And we get about 25 direct service workers that come quarterly because they know if they miss a meeting, they're going to hear about a service that somebody has found, somebody is starting. It's an incredible, we took it from an hour and a half meeting to now it's like a 2.5 hour meeting because people just share all this information. It's not in concrete, but man, it works.
Right, and the question is though, how do you make that, in order for it to be systemic, it has to be in concrete, it has to be in a structure that then can be modeled throughout. And then that has to game out, what does that mean in terms of cost? And I think that's the thing where we struggle for in the county and why this conversation is so important for us is, if we haven't realized anything else in the county, at least since I've been here, is we can't say to the school system, all right, we're gonna send you our babies, your words, which we love, and you educate them, and we're gonna provide you resources to do that. Because some of the tools that you need aren't within your power. Some of the tools that we have are within the power of the government, mine, but some of the tools we need are outside of ours, whether it's state, federal, and private sector. And so what I think what I've struggled with probably for 5 years and why this commission is here is, how do you put some type of actual structure in there that access these points and makes it work within the system, which then will get us to ultimately, the real question is, what does that cost and how do you pay for it?
For sure, when I was deputy mayor for Health and Human Services in DC, that was one of the challenges that Ms. Gray gave me. And one of the things that I found was that it was not all about money, that it was really how we were doing our work, and how the agencies were doing the work in single silos, and that we were duplicating services across agencies in a systematic approach. And so we took very distinct areas of the work and began to integrate them, right? So I'll give you one example. Under our, and Betty and I talked about this a lot because I was dealing with the homeless population. And DHS had both homeless and TANF, right? The same families are TANF families and as the families in our homeless system. Yet they were going into very different doors and neither were talking to each other. So the amount of money and resources that we were dealing with workers and social workers and whoever serving these families and filling out the forms and asking the same questions and providing the services weren't talking to each other. We consolidated and integrated the entry to that and reduced the dollars at that front end and put them out to direct services. We did the same in the system of care and behavioral health. We took the behavioral health piece, we built a system of care and brought together all of those that were involved. And so we began to, fortunately, left before it was all done. We did the same with early childhood. Now, early childhood was sitting at DHS at the State Office of Education, because in the district, of course, we've got the state and the local, and we had the community-based. And so we formed these quality improvement networks and began to integrate the work across. So I think that your first step is some of that on the ground integrating work. We did that with truancy. The school system was dealing with truancy. When we did the data, we found that kids were being truant because the largest number of truant kids were kids with asthma. So our health folks had to sit at the table and figure out what we were doing in terms of at our qualified clinics in terms of the escalation. Truancy wasn't because kids, I mean, there was a lot because kids aren't going to school, but that. The other was bringing the transportation people in after we did the data and figuring out that if we reduce the transportation costs and integrated it into that, we reduce the number of kids that were truant. So we lowered our truancy numbers by creating a system. So it's all, I always go back to the systems approach on the ground level and then beginning to build it within government. And a lot of it is what services is government doing that it's too expensive and you could do it cheaper on the outside, so pushing money out. And the leadership piece around integration. It's not always just more money.
And Phoebe, to your point about the integration among the agencies, you know, we're doing that because we're talking and working closer together. But our computer system, you know, we have to work on the various data systems are our problem. But we're doing our best at every portal to identify those children that are at risk for whatever reason they're at risk. And we do work with them, and we're working now better with the school system than ever before with at-risk young people. But it's the babies that we do continue to worry about because, you know, unless we catch them right at the hospital, which is something that we're working on as well, to make sure that we can identify those families that are most at risk and try to get the services to them that
your
they
pediatricians are a
deserve.
great help, and the Association of Pediatrics has just came out with a new, I don't know if it's a mandate or requirement, so that pediatricians do more on the assessment side. It was a couple of days ago. They put it out. I don't know if folks have seen it. And bringing them to the table, bringing the Association of Pediatrics to the table to see what role they can play in terms of the referrals and the identification is really, they're the ones seeing those babies.
That's exactly right.
And I'm going to go also back to prevention. I can tell you to the penny what it costs for Healthy Family Services for a family. Compare that to what it costs for that family to go, for that child to go into foster care. I mean, it's 10 times the cost. And the damage that's done when we separate those families.
And do you all get more McV money in this county than just for healthy families? Are you pulling down some of that money?
I just know the Healthy Families.
The state
McVie money.
Yeah, we're getting to McVie, but. for
Right, I know,
healthy
for healthy
families.
families, but, you know, the McVie money will allow you to do almost any model too, healthy families, but also more sort of larger prevention models, like Early Head Start even is McVie approved, and parents as teachers, and that's how a lot of counties get to those kids who are post-birth prior to pre-K. You know, they use these more child development oriented home visiting programs that aren't even for prevention of child abuse and neglect, but are for just promoting child development, like parents as teachers.
And infant mortality. I mean, a lot of our home visiting started with the infant mortality.
So I'm mindful of our time. I know, Donna, you had your hand up.
That's okay. I was going to bring up a whole other topic, but because I think we've flirted around it, the whole role of parents and parent education. I don't want to get into it tonight, but it's implied in so many things you said, but I think it's a huge, important issue, particularly when you come from a developmental perspective and not early childhood. Yeah, but you got to get the parents and help them.
And our next series is going to be on family literacy, so maybe we'll be able to touch on some of that for our next. Mr. Baker, do you have any closing comments, thoughts?
I guess I was supposed to make some, but I think I took up the time to ask a question. No, I mean, I think yeah, I do. I think, you know, this is important for us, which is why we're taping it, so that we can show it throughout the county. But it also leads us to a discussion of where we want to go in terms of the commission and the things that we want to leave for the structure. And that's the whole thing with me, is having this conversation and then taking the information to go back and work on the ideas for every part of the things that we control. And that is working with our school system, working with the government as a whole, and looking at these ideas and then coming up and saying, okay, by 2020, where do we want to be under, you know, early childhood? What does that model look like? So I guess my closing comment is really to say this is just the beginning of the conversation, because what we'll ask, you know, Tahani working with, certainly having our, you know, the rest of the contingency, not only from Betty's, you know, bailiwick, but also from the school system, and saying, okay, well, what does that mean? Because there is a lot of issues that were raised today that I hadn't thought about. So what we're going to ask of you is, as we pull these ideas together, which then becomes the blueprint for our 2020 model for the county, that, you know, you'd be open to sharing more of the ideas and us asking questions and more questions and coming back with everybody.